Any of us who wear glasses know that we'll just keep looking through our smudged lenses until finally we get tired of not being able to see clearly and clean the lenses. If there's a smudge on the lens, the world will look smudged. Or to use Jesus' wonderful metaphor, if there's a log in your own eye, you'll see logs everywhere. It's the beam in our own eye that makes the world look splintered. You know how it is with pointing fingers. One is pointed away, but 3 are pointed back. Eve and Adam were forbidden to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Their seeing was blurred, however, by the suggestion that the serpent put in their eyes. Oh, you won't die. Your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God. And their eyes were opened, all right, but all they saw was that they were naked, and they hid from God. This knowledge of good and evil is about making judgments, and it's that knowledge that splinters, isolates, and separates us. Remember what Jesus taught us last week. The measure you give will be the measure you get back. When we look at the world through unhealthy eyes, we naturally conclude that the problem with the world is out there. But Jesus holds up a mirror, inviting us to look first into our own eyes. Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen tells the story of Josh, a brilliant but depressed surgeon who came to her for help. He was seriously thinking about early retirement. I can barely make myself get out of bed most mornings, Josh told her. I hear the same complaints day after day. I see the same diseases over and over again. Remen suggested a spiritual practice, journaling the events of the day. In the evening, he suggested that he revisit the day, recalling the day through 3 questions. What surprised me today? What moved me or touched me today? What inspired me today? Josh was dubious, but Remen encouraged him. Less expensive than Prozac, she said. Laughing, he agreed to try. At first, nothing happened. Every night, the same 3 answers. Nothing, nothing, and nothing. Rachel gave him some advice. Try looking at the people around you as if you were a novelist, a journalist, or maybe a poet. Look for the stories. After about 6 weeks, Josh brought his journal to share with Rachel. At first, he said, he was only able to see people in hindsight. At night, when the day was done, he would look back through the eyeglasses of his 3 questions and see what he could not see when he was in the midst of it. But then, gradually, he began to see the inspiring, the moving, and the surprising as it was happening. This was a major growth for him and made possible the next step. He began to say what he saw. And he talked about more than the disease. He talked to people about their minds and spirits as they walked with their sickness. The journaling practice had produced an inner change, and now the inner change was producing a behavioral change. The first patient he spoke to in this way was a 38-year-old woman with ovarian cancer who had undergone major abdominal surgery, followed by a very debilitating chemotherapy. In the midst of a routine follow-up visit one morning, he suddenly saw her for the first time. Her 4-year-old on her lap and her 6-year-old leaning against her. Both children were shiny clean, well-fed, happy, and obviously well-loved. Aware of the profound suffering caused by her sort of chemotherapy, Josh was deeply moved by the depth of her commitment to mother her children. And for the first time, he connected it to the strength of her will to live. You are such a great mother to your kids. Even after all you've been through, there is something very strong in you that could maybe heal you someday. She smiled at him, and he realized with a shock that he had never seen her smile before. "Thank you," she told him warmly. "That means a lot to me." Josh began to ask other people, "What has sustained you in dealing with this illness?" Or, "Where do you find your strength?" Things that he really wanted to hear about. He said, "I knew cancer very well, but I did not know people before." He told Rachel that for the first time in his career, people had begun to thank him for their surgery, and some had even given him gifts. He sat in silence for a few moments, and then he reached into his pocket and he brought out a beautiful stethoscope engraved with his name. "A patient gave me this," he said, obviously moved. Rachel smiled at him, and then she said, "And what do you do with that, Josh?" He looked at her, puzzled for a moment, and then he laughed out loud. "I listen to hearts, Rachel. I listen to hearts." Out of the good treasure of the heart, the good person produces good, and out of evil treasure, the evil person produces evil. For it is out of the abundance of the heart that the mouth speaks.